I am Jennifer Lay. I'm from the Riverside BIA, who is the host of the Serenity Experience this winter in Riverside. Before I hand it over to Jessica, I'm just going to do a land acknowledgement, a brief bit of housekeeping for this talk, and a quick intro to Jessica's work and the Serenity Experience. So just to start off, we acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. And it's now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. So I just wanted to mention, how I met Jessica and how this all began. So I first had heard of the Serenity Experience by being part of one of the iterations of the Serenity Experience when I went to OMA Chiropractic and Wellness's Love Yourself event. I think this was in 2019 at this point. Yes. So that was my introduction to it, and it just really brought, serenity to me. So I started thinking about how can we bring light and also positive vibes to Queen Street East in Toronto when we are going through this very difficult winter with the pandemic, a lot of lockdowns which are still in place, and just how do we make storefront windows vibrant and kind of bring a positive message to our main street. So that's how this began to come about, and Jessica will tell you more about that. But just to give a background, Jessica is a Toronto-based visual artist known for her whimsical abstract landscapes that she creates with her photographs. Jessica's adapted one of these pieces into an immersive installation called the Serenity Experience. And since its debut in November 2018, the installation has evolved and been exhibited in a range of locations, including her solo show at the Artist Network Gallery and FIAP in Paris, France. The latest version that we're talking about today currently occupies 115 linear feet of storefront space along Queen Street East in our neighborhood of Riverside. And thanks to a partnership with City of Toronto, Riverside BIA, and local businesses. So this version of the project has many interactive components, as you'll hear, and we'll talk about what's online that you can interact with as well, in addition to on your night, evening walks. And the purpose of it is to trigger our brains to feel calmness and happiness. And it's part of a larger experience and experiment into how we can harness this information to increase our own sense of well-being. So I'm just going to pass it over to Jessica at this point.
As Jennifer said, the current Serenity Experience in Riverside is huge. It spans 10 different locations, storefronts of businesses. Some of them are somewhat open, some of them are completely closed to the public right now. So we've done different variations in each space. And it's sort of, I always knew the project could be bigger and more, and this is bigger and more than I ever could have imagined. So I just wanted to take a quick second to thank Jennifer for her vision and her trust and suggesting it in the first place. So this humongous project didn't start off that way. It started, I'm going to tell a little story. It started with two different sparks from two different friends, seemingly completely unrelated things that happened within a week. And I took it as a sign from the universe. So the first thing that happened was I'd met a friend for dinner. We had burgers and cocktails. This was a few years ago. And I hadn't seen this friend in I'm going to say maybe close to 10 years. She had a couple of little kids and got really busy. So we were having this amazing catching up dinner. And I can't even remember how it came up, but she asked me if I'd ever tried meditating? And I said, no, because I don't really like to sit still. And I don't think I could quiet my brain that like I had the constant list, right? And she said, okay. And she just left it. Bless her heart. She didn't she didn't push it and say that's exactly why you need to start meditating. But I had another visit with a different friend, totally unrelated, later that week. And this second friend brought me a gift card, a bookstore gift card, which is one of my favorite things in the world ever. And I went to the bookstore later that week. And as soon as I came in, you know how they have those tables of what the staff recommends? They had this whole table of books about meditation and mindfulness right inside the door. So I took that as a sign. And there was one little book that was called Unplug, and it was small. It looked like something you could read in a couple of days. And it specifically said it was for people with busy minds or something that appealed to me, that I thought, okay, this is geared towards people who are resisting it. So I read the book. It probably did take a couple of days. And the thing that stuck out, they've done all these, there's global studies all over the place happening about the effects of mindfulness and meditation. But what stood out for me was this one study where they found that 28 minutes a day of meditating over a 2-month period physically changes the landscape of your brain. So just take 1 second to let that sink in. Because that blew my mind. That's like, they can see it on a brain scan that your brain has changed within those 2 months. And at the time that I read it, it was February of, I think, 2018. And I'm not usually very busy over the winter. It's my slow time. So I thought, all right, I took it as a dare almost, of like, I can spare half an hour a day for 2 months, that time of year for sure. So I tried it, and I downloaded an app, and I still use the app. I find it way more helpful. I need someone guiding me to keep me focused. I still find it challenging to quiet my brain. And apparently the point isn't to quiet your brain. The point is the practice of learning to observe your thoughts and letting them go, rather than obsessing and following them. Anyway, the first piece of artwork I made after I started meditating was, to me, vastly different. I'm sure everybody else sees the connecting thread through what my work had been before that. But it was called Serenity, and I'm going to show you, I'm going to do a quick screen share here to show you the piece in case you haven't seen it. It is this guy here. So as you can see, there's a lot of calmness. There's a lot of, to me, this is negative space, but there is still a lot going on with the blues, the layers of water. There are 4 different images that are layered in here. 3 of them are water and 1's an island. So I found this an incredibly soothing piece to be around. It's about, well, it's exactly 3 feet high by 5 feet wide. So it takes up a fair amount of your peripheral vision when you're in the room with it, in the studio, in a booth at an art fair. And I just felt calmer around it. And I noticed the more I showed it to other people, the more it seemed to have that same effect on other people as well. Like almost hypnotic. It was so calming. And so I became curious about that. What was it about this piece? Were there specific things that were calming to our brains without us even intending to do that? And if so, how could I maybe deliberately take that information and put it into my art so that my art was calming? I sort of, to tell you the truth, I kind of wanted, I wanted to sneak mindfulness into my booth, my work, and share this with people who were like me, who were going to resist it if you just came out and asked them if they'd thought of meditating. So what I did from then is, one of the books I read was called Blue Mind, and he talks a lot about, it was Wallace J. Nichols, talks a lot about water, and the calming effects that water have on us and how they trigger our brains. And this is, our brains haven't evolved that much in the past, like long time. I'm not, an anthropologist or or a neuroscientist, but it's our brains are essentially what they were from caveman days in a lot of ways. So things like the sparkle of sunlight off the top of the water triggers our brain to feel like this is a good place to be. There's all sorts of reasons that they think that that would be sort of, you know, if you're near water, you probably have a food source, you have transportation, you have water, you can see your guests and or enemies coming from a distance, that sort of thing. So they have programs now where they take, say, like soldiers with PTSD, and they take them out kayaking or they take them fishing, and it's part of a very deliberate program to have them on the water to try and retrain their brain to get out of high anxiety mode and into what they call rest and digest. And right now, of course, we all know, pandemic, our brains have been in anxiety mode for a long time. And it doesn't, even though we're not in high alert, maybe, we can't really, in a physical way that our body understands, we can't really do anything. We can't outrun the pandemic, for instance. So we kind of have to find other ways to trick our mind into thinking we're doing something, and it's okay to kind of like soothe our minds, like it's a little baby that needs comforting. So yes, and this, I mean, originally when I created the Serenity Experience, it was sort of summer and fall of 2018. And at the time, my intent was to see if I could create something when I was feeling good and on firm footing that I could use to soothe myself when I felt like I didn't have the conscious effort in me to do stuff to soothe myself. I mean, we all know there are things we do that make us feel better, feel happier. But when we aren't feeling happy, we don't necessarily have the motivation to do those things. So we know that exercise makes us feel better, but if you feel like crap, you don't necessarily have the inner push to go and do that. So I wanted something that would just get me over the little hump, that would give me the inner push so that I could go do the things that were deliberate. So it turns out there's a name for this. I've started taking mindfulness. The U of T continuing studies program has a mindfulness certificate course, and I've taken 3 of the 5 so far, and it's fascinating. It turns out the broad term for it is self-directed neuroplasticity. So yes, neuroplasticity basically means your brain changes and it gets habits, and it can work both ways. It can work with good habits and with bad habits. It can start associating things in a negative way, and then that's the way it will most easily travel. Or you can train it to associate in a positive way and strengthen that part of it. It's not a muscle, but it's sort of like exercising a muscle. Our brains, unfortunately, have a negativity bias, which means you're more inclined, if somebody says something neutral, you're more inclined to take it in a negative way than a positive way, just naturally. That's the way we're wired. I don't know why. It can be a drag. So if you sort of work on being aware of that through mindfulness, meditation, or any kind of thing like that, where you're deliberately trying to control your brain rather than letting your brain control you, then what it allows you to do is pause, and instead of just automatically reacting to that, it lets you take in the information, consider it, and then deliberately choose your words or actions moving forward. And I think, I'm going to guess we've all had those experiences where when you look back at how a certain situation unraveled, you realize that if one or both parties had just taken a breath earlier on in that situation, it would have unraveled completely differently. The day would have gone differently. You wouldn't have ended up in court or whatever. Not speaking from personal experience, but well, yes, but not the court part. There are so many opportunities for things like this where you can change the outcome of a situation by changing your reaction to it. And then in turn, what happens is you're changing your perception of reality, and you actually change your reality, which still blows my mind. Even though I've been thinking about this, this is literally what I've made my artwork about for the last few years, is about deliberately trying to consciously change your outlook to change your reality. And I also have found, this isn't just an assumption, it's experience at this point, it's contagious. Positivity is contagious. You can absolutely spread this sort of a mindset amongst the people who are close to you. So I think that's powerful as well. If you don't feel like doing it for yourself is enough motivation, do it for the people around you that you love. So what I decided to do was make something where this piece, Serenity, that I showed you could be experienced with all of the senses, where it felt like I was in the piece, where it was all that I was aware of, and it was just really soaking into me and hugging me and soothing me. And my intent with that was, I had a sort of a list of things of what I wanted it to accomplish, and I wanted to connect to the senses because that's very grounding. Connect to nature because I still have the sort of eco warrior 20-year-old inside me somewhere, where it and I know there's that whole Jacques Cousteau quote where you protect what you love. I think the more people can connect to nature, the more they're going to be concerned about it getting bulldozed and that kind of thing. So connecting to nature was an important part of the puzzle for me. Connecting to happy childhood memories also was part of it. Connecting to yourself, because I think a lot of times it's really easy to put ourselves last in line in terms of who we're worried about in a day. And then connecting to community. And this was even before pandemic and lockdown and all those things, where it became really obvious that community was very, very important to all of us. It's pretty much essential to the way our brains are wired. And all of these things are going to help activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is, we've all heard of the fight or flight sort of mindset when we're threatened, and that's a good survival technique. Short term, it's not good long term for your body, for your mind, for anything. So you want to get into what is called the rest and digest. There's a few different ways you can do that, and most of them involve effort. And as I said, I was looking for something that was a bit of a shortcut that didn't have any effort, so that we could get to the part where we were willing to make effort, or able. So I'm going to show you a short clip of the video portion of the installation that I made. And I'm also going to ask you, we're going to do deep breaths together. This is one of my favorite things. Here's the video. So we're going to take deep breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth all together while we're watching this. And I will let you know it's a 3-minute clip, and it'll go faster than you think. When you do your exhales, let yourself feel tension moving right out. Push it out. It's very powerful. And then I'm going to share with you, this is the hut that I built at the gallery when I had my solo show. It's just sort of a quick little tour of how it was set up for those of you who didn't get to see it. The audio was different back then, you might notice. In this version, I also had essential oils, and you'll see them just towards the end of the clip. The video moves down, and I had them in these little jars with twigs at the bottom. There they are, to also connect to a sense of smell. Now that we're at, not in a small hut together doing it, you get to control the smell part for yourself. And then as Jennifer mentioned, I built a version at OMA's Love Yourself event last February, which was pretty consistent with what was at the gallery. It was sort of a similar sized space, about 3 or 4 grown-ups could fit in there at the same time. And it was, and when I did it at the gallery, I also had, I wanted to mention this because I'll come back to this later, I had a mini retreat day, and it was so far, I think, my favorite day of my whole life. It was amazing. We had yoga instructors came in, we had people come in to lead a couple of guided group meditations. There was the hut that you could go in. There were people doing tarot readings, which was a cool aspect of it too. And somebody came in to talk about crystals and working with crystals. I think that was it. Anyway, somehow it was a full day and it was amazing. It was so relaxing. So we have figured out a way to make that part of this version as well, which I'm very excited about. So yeah, this, and then the most recent adaptation is when Jennifer approached me and said, would you be interested in making a version of this, adapting it on the scale of a neighborhood, essentially, something that could be experienced from the sidewalk, by people walking by, people headed to work, people driving by or on the streetcar or whatever. And immediately I thought, yes, this is the most amazing thing I've ever heard of in my life. I want this thing to be my life, honestly. it's so, every now and then it hits me that I've somehow managed to make my work life entirely about trying to figure out what makes people feel happy. And in doing that, I'm thinking about happiness a lot. I'm asking friends about happiness a lot. I'm getting to hear from friends about what makes them happy in a day. And spoiler alert, it's almost always little things. It's never, I bought a Lamborghini. Also, I don't have friends who are going to buy Lamborghinis, but it's never that. It's really simple things, like somebody had some really delicious cheese, or, they have a favorite mug that they just really love holding and they love the feel of it, or there was beautiful fluffy blizzard snow out the window today, or it's always really basic little things. And I love that too. That's because then it means we're all rich, right? Like once you start noticing that, you realize we've all have access to all these tiny little things. You just need to notice them. Once you start noticing those things, you can kind of, this is a whole other conversation, but you can kind of detach yourself from that constant consumerism kind of mindset, on the big corporate scale of, you need a bigger house, you need this and that and everything to be happy. And then of course they do studies, and the people with the bigger houses aren't any happier than those of us with tiny houses. But so I find it really powerful to discover the little things that can make us happy in a day. So I think that was, Jennifer, did you want to talk about the neighborhood version of it a bit? And then I do have pictures. I have some slides with pictures of the different installations and a couple of videos to show people in case they haven't seen them yet.
Sure. Yeah, no, I'll talk a little bit more about it. So because because so many things have been restricted with the pandemic, we haven't been able to do our usual events with the neighborhood, we used to have a full program year round of events that would run like street festivals, guided walking tours, our wine and craft beer festival. Everything was gone. So we started using early in the pandemic. We started using working with businesses to do their storefront windows, which was one thing that really still was, accessible to people, no matter what. So we had done a number of like activations in the storefront windows, and that got me thinking, let's do a partnership to bring something over the winter, something that is positive, something that brings light. And a number of our businesses, I think, had already somewhat experienced the Serenity experience from you, in different ways. So I mentioned it to a few of our businesses, and they were really enthusiastic about the idea. And we just kind of built it from there. And I think you and I started by talking about having it in, a few windows, and then it kept growing and growing. And each window is like unique and kind of has its own character and different ways of doing it. And kind of the idea was that, regardless of restrictions, we would be able to have people seeing this on their health walks when they go out just for fresh air in the evening. And then the entire project became like virtual as well. So we'll show you this shortly, but it's we have a full virtual map. There's a virtual scavenger hunt, which maybe some of you are taking part in, which is kind of fun. So yeah.
Thank you. So I'm going to screen share again to show some of the pictures. Here we go. Oh, this is a video one. This is cool. These are two of the locations, Dresden Vision and Eastbound Brewing, little video tours of their setups. So each location has this curtain of strands of the sparkly beads, and then the lights around them kind of make those twinkle. On the north side, the sun makes them twinkle during the day, but we wanted something to be really magical at night. And then there's this underwatery kind of light that's shining up on the ceiling, and the sparkly light down on the ground and the sidewalk. And they all have a happiness tip on their windows. Each one has a happiness tip that's unique to that business. And for the most part, they were all very specific to the nature of what their business and their brand was. So for instance, Eastbound, their happiness tip was to try something new flavor-wise, try something that you might not even think that you'll like. And when I talked to Dave about that, he was super excited. He said that was a big part of what they were all about. Is they also have a kitchen. They do food as well as beer. And he said they really encourage people about pairings and about trying stuff they've never tried before. And here are a couple of the other locations. We have Dark Horse Espresso and Dimensions Framing. And then this is one of the little window decals that Jennifer made up and went around and put on. And I'm so grateful for that. There's so much of the local stuff that Jennifer took care of, and so much of the behind the scenes website stuff that I could never have done without her. So then what else? And then we have, album hair. So some of them we put up a screen at the Opera House Grill. We put up a screen, and also at Album, so that we can project onto it. There are 6 different locations that have a bit of the full video piece is 25 minutes. So I split it up into 6 parts, and each location has a 6th of it. So each one of them has 2 phrases that pop up, and then you can see Oma's. Oma's is pretty magical from around the corner as well. And then we have Untitled Salon and Common Sort. And some of these 2, Common Sort's shut down right now still, and Untitled is doing curbside. So for these businesses, they were kind of big empty spaces in a way, and this has felt like a really nice way to bring life into them, and light, and hope, frankly, I hope. This is Corman. They are lawyers, and I love this. This is, I don't have favorites, but this is one of my favorites. Because they've got these two, it used to be a men's clothing store, so they have these two little, almost like aquarium looking spaces where nobody walks through them, right? They're just kind of display cases up at the front, so I could do what I wanted. And this one on the left that you can see, I've got a bouquet of branches, and hanging off of them are these little leaf shapes that I painted. They're on watercolor paper. And this I did, I don't know if you remember, Jennifer, I did these when we did the Serenity Experience at OMA. I had this in the room, and this was how people could reflect on what their feelings or thoughts were of the Serenity Experience. I have had different versions in different places. Sometimes it was a magnet board and people used the little alphabet magnets to spell it out. In this case, they got colorful markers and they wrote on the leaves. So I thought this would be a lovely place to display.
Yeah, so I'll show you, I'm just gonna share my screen. Okay, so this is our website, riverside-to.com, and you just kind of go under happenings, and we've got the Serenity Experience in Riverside. So each of these little green squares is a different thing. So if you click on the soothing sounds, you can simply listen to that same soundtrack that you heard earlier, just the audio track, anywhere you want. So that will be lovely to do while you're falling asleep or walking outside or anything. And of course, while you're doing the tour, if you do it in person. So the virtual tour is brings you to the map of all the 10 locations. And again, if you can't physically get out and make the tour, you can click on each of the locations. You can look at a series of photos. You can also click on the, you can look at their happiness tip, which is both kind of in a photo, but in writing here, so you can see it better. You can click on this to see, again, to hear the soothing sounds. Click on of the virtual experience to see a short 1.5 minute or so clip of both videos and photos of that particular location. And then you can see the full Serenity video. So that would be the one where you can see the beautiful layered photo with the word that comes up like breathe or something else inside the video. So that's what you would see if you were seeing the video from outside that window. So there's lots of info here also about our scavenger hunt and how to get that on your own smartphone. You just have to download a free app called Goose Chase. And then it talks about the business and of course, Jessica. So each of these little points, locations, is a gold mine of information here on this map. So if you go back to our website, there's also, again, it mentions the scavenger hunt, and you need a code. So you download the free app on your phone, you need a code, and then you just enter and start submitting really simple, fun photos for a chance to win local prizes. We're going to have some gift cards to local businesses, and we'll do that kind of towards the end, which is the end of, I guess, this version of the project is March 20th. So you still have about almost a month to go. So this page is happiness tips, and you can actually see all the happiness tips that are on the windows in these little squares. So you can kind of get a sense of that. And then as we add more happiness tip videos, you'll be able to see Instagram live talks that Jessica has done with the different businesses and other practitioners that talk about each of those tips. So that's a really fun one. And then video content is, again, one page with all the videos at all the locations. So you can take your full virtual tour that's 9 minutes long, where Jessica's sped up the tour. So you're basically steaming through the neighborhood and stopping at each location and kind of enjoying it. And then you can view each one separately. um, at each location. The Serenity Schedule is simply these online virtual. This is today's talk, and then coming up next is the Serenity Mini Retreat, which Jessica will speak more to. That's on March 13th, and again, you can register for free. Jessica also has her recommended reading list here on her website. So sorry, it's a bit slow, but that will lead to that. And more about the art and Jessica. So this is a great page. Again, it's at riverside-to.com.
So I want to tell you guys about the virtual mini retreat because I'm super excited about this. We did, as I said, a mini retreat day in the gallery, and it was amazing. And it was, to me, it was amazing how much you could feel like you'd gone on vacation without having left. Hey, buddy, without having left. I hadn't even left my city. You know, like some people hadn't left their own neighborhood, and it was just one day. And I was on the organizing end of it. Usually, as Jennifer can attest to, when you're on the organizing end, you are not relaxing, no matter how relaxing whatever it is you're organizing is. But even though I was organizing it, and I think there were 10 different practitioners involved with that as well, between a couple different yoga instructors and meditation, guided meditation leaders, and all these things. So it was, the logistics were thick. I can't think of another, but it was still really amazing. It was the best. So when we first went into lockdown almost a year ago now, and I was kind of freaking out. I think we all were. I think it's okay to admit we were all kind of freaking out at the beginning. I think that's normal. I decided to, you know, you've got a choice. You can either keep freaking out and freaking out about stuff you can't control, really, or you can sort of choose, what can I control? What can I focus on that'll be a bit more productive right now? So what I decided to do was make up a schedule for myself for a 3-day mini retreat. And I couldn't leave the house. We have a tiny spare bedroom that is 8 feet by 10 feet. And that's with, like, it's got furniture in it as well. So there's about 2 feet by 6 feet of empty floor space. It's enough to roll out a yoga mat. So I sent myself on a retreat to the spare bedroom, and I had a schedule of guided meditations, of doing yin yoga, which is really, really good at triggering the soothing parts in your brain. And I did a lot of journaling and reflection, and I thought specifically about, who do I want to be in the middle of this pandemic? And who do I want to be coming out of this pandemic? What do I want my life to look like? What do I want my energy to be focused on? And the answer now, in hindsight, seems super obvious. But I came out of that room thinking, this is what I want. This felt amazing. And I want to share this as far and wide as I possibly can with as many people as I possibly can. And so that's back in the spring. I started doing daily happiness tips on Facebook Live, because I had mentioned the idea of the mini retreat to a few friends, and all of them said, that sounds great, and there's no way I can deal with that right now. Like, they couldn't even commit to something that they knew was going to relax them. So that's why I did the daily happiness tips that were just, it was like 10 minutes. Here's easy, simple little things that you can do that are going to help you get over the hump of whatever your day is back then. Now, I'm hoping that the cumulative effect of, we've now been going for just over a month with the Serenity Experience in Riverside. So I'm kind of hoping that people have been following along with the happiness tips, or have been able to see the virtual tours, or see them in real life, the locations. And I'm hoping there are people who are feeling like they're at a place where they're ready to commit to self-care for, even if it's an evening or an afternoon. If you've got 3 days, that's amazing. But basically, no matter what your schedule is or your amount of time that you have available, I'm really, really hoping that people can give themselves a minute to take a breath and really like we've been through a lot this year, you guys. That's like the understatement of my lifetime. It's been hard, it's been heavy, it's been stressful, and we all need to keep going after this, right? And it's kind of like at a certain point you are totally running on empty. And so what I'm really hoping is that people will take a moment to fill themselves up again, and then set out with a clearer head and feeling calmer and feeling um, more able to be in control of where you're focusing your attention and energy, rather than just getting distracted by whatever the latest stressful bit of news is, and falling down vortexes of negativity and whatever, which is the easiest thing in the world to do, by the way. So what we're going to do is virtual mini retreat. And I have done this with a couple of groups of friends, and it worked delightfully. So now I'm excited to share it more broadly. We're offering it for free. You can sign up. We're going to have a link in the PDF that we send out to sign up for it. There's also links on both of our Instagram bios on the website, as Jennifer showed. And I have a quick little thing that shows what is going to be involved. And I'm deliberately aiming this for everybody. So it doesn't matter if you have experience doing yoga or whatever, any of it, because yin yoga is very, like you could do it in your jeans if you wanted, you know, like it's not, it's not high level expert yoga. I'm gonna say it's really slow. It's very slow. It's easy. It's meant to put you into that rest and digest mode. So we're going to have, and I'm going to do guided meditations. I've got a few already. So it's going to be very straightforward and simple. Even if you've never done it before, it's literally as simple as you just listen to me talking and you breathe, and that's it. It is the easiest thing. And we go to a happy place in your mind, which is, once you realize that you can go to a happy place in your mind, it is like a vacation you can take anytime. And literally, like, you've got a few minutes, you can take this little tiny vacation, and it will help sort of reset you. It's really powerful. Chi Junkie in the Riverside neighborhood is partnering with us for the yin yoga. So I'm excited about that. They're going to offer, they have a couple of live stream classes that are happening, and then you'll also have access to a recording if you can't watch it live. It was important to me that all of this was super flexible. So no matter what your schedule was, I'm going to give you a suggested schedule of, like, here's if you have one afternoon, if you have a day, if you have 2 days, if you have 3 days, that sort of thing. And then it's very broad. It's sort of like if you're doing it over, when I did it over 3 days, I had it divided up into morning, afternoon, evening. So it would say morning, whatever, let's say yoga and meditation. It doesn't matter when you do that. It doesn't matter how long you do it for. Even if you do it for 15 minutes, it's better than 0 minutes, right? So it's very flexible depending on how much you want to jump into it. Creative play is also part of it, because I think that, again, you're tapping into that childhood thing and doing things that you don't do professionally and you don't expect to be good at. And those are also really, I've found this year, really powerful, kind of nurturing stuff. A lot of us only do the stuff that we have to do or that we do professionally, and we expect to be good at it, and we get really frustrated if we're not good at it. But if you do something, like, I'm terrible at drawing. Anytime I draw, it makes me laugh because it's so bad. So that to me is funny. And sports. I'm also terrible at sports. So my my husband to this day still laughs. He's baffled. When we were dating, we had a sports day, and this was in Northern Ireland. I went there to visit him, and he brought up these, like, I can't even remember, let's say like ball and glove. It wasn't ball and glove because this was Northern Ireland, it wasn't North America, but something to that effect. And he literally couldn't believe how terrible I was and how much entertainment I got out of being that terrible, that I absolutely never caught anything. I can't throw it near anybody who has a glove, it might have been a Frisbee. Anyway, I'm terrible at all of them. It's like, and I think once you embrace that and just have fun with it, then it's a whole other thing. Nature walks. Nature's good for you for a million different reasons, but it is very rejuvenating just to go for a walk anywhere near trees, or especially now that we're coming into March, things are going to be sprouting soon, and that is super exciting. There's going to be little buds of things, so anytime we can pay attention to that is good. And then reflection for me is journaling. Not everybody does journaling. I'm going to include some prompts of like things to think about, and you can just think about them in your head, or you can think about them in writing, or you can do like an audio or video diary, whatever you feel like. No experience needed is the important part. And we're going to do a kickoff meeting March 13th at 2 p.m. Eastern time, Toronto time. And that'll basically be, let's just sort of quickly meet, introduce ourselves, say if we've had any particular challenges that we want to share, any particular intents that we want to share. Sharing is optional. And then if anyone has questions about the schedule, and then we'll go off. We'll have a couple of weeks, do the retreat whenever it suits us within those couple of weeks, and then meet back up again March 27th, which is 2 weeks later. And again, if you want to share, if you had any kind of really good experiences or surprises or insights or aha moments, or if you have new intent coming out of the retreat that you want to share, because sometimes accountability is very powerful too. If you actually say it out loud that you had this insight and now you're going to start doing whatever, the fact that you've said it out loud, even if it's to strangers, is quite powerful.
So thank you so much for joining, and we hope to see you at the virtual mini retreat.
Yes, thank you so much. Have a lovely weekend.
Yeah.